If you're always feeling very tired and you're seeing a decrease in strength and athletic performance, you could be overtraining. In this video, we'll cover some of the signs and symptoms of overtraining, how to treat it, and most importantly, how to prevent it. There is no treatment for overtraining. The best thing you can do is prevent it from happening. Now, it does take some time to get into that overtraining state, but when you are in that overtraining state, it will take lots of time to recover from. Depending on how severe the overtraining is, it could take from 1 to 6 months to recover from it. So this is why it's so important to prevent this here. Now, it does take at least 3 weeks to get into an overtraining state. So if you have been experiencing some of these signs and symptoms of overtraining for less than 3 weeks, you are actually not in an overtraining state yet. You are just overreaching. So if you are overreaching, you can recover much faster from this. You will likely just need to take 1 to 2 weeks off and you should be good to go. And you won't likely see a decrease in performance because you didn't need to take that much time off. Intentionally overreaching followed by a taper can actually be a training method used to help increase athletic performance, but this would be a whole separate video. So the first thing to understand here is to increase performance, you need the stimulation, but you also need recovery too. So let's say, for example, here you bench press 150 pounds because that's 80% of your 1 rep max. And on your first set, you got 8 reps. Your second set, you got 7 reps. And then your third set, you got 6 reps. So you did those 3 sets here. Now, if you did that same workout again, 3 hours later, you would not be getting the same amount of reps. Your performance would decrease. So I'm just kind of throwing numbers around here, but you would probably get something more like 6 reps on your first set, then 5 and 5 maybe. You would need to wait at least 48 to 72 hours before you go back to that same workout again, and then you might see an increase in your performance and get 9 reps on that first set. So these right here are some of the signs and symptoms of overtraining. The biggest sign of overtraining is seeing a decrease in your performance despite pushing yourself even harder than you were before when you were maintaining or increasing performance. So you can simply make sure you don't overtrain just by assessing yourself daily and make sure you're not experiencing these signs and symptoms here for multiple days in a row. And then just see if you take some time off if you still experience some of these signs and symptoms or not. If you notice that they have gone away, you can get back to training again. It is also very important to understand if you're experiencing one of these signs and symptoms or a few of them, that does not mean for sure you're overtraining. So if you're depressed because you have relationship issues, that does not mean you're overtraining. You got to see if you're experiencing many of these signs and symptoms, not just one or a few. Now, when it comes to trying to decide what will be too much, what will put you at risk for overtraining, and trying to decide what will be too little is rate of perceived exertion, intensity, volume, and recovery. So rate of perceived exertion is when you just estimate how hard you're pushing yourself just based on how you feel. While intensity is the percentage of your maximum force output that you're training at. So these do both kind of have a direct relationship. If you lift at 100% of your 1 rep max and you complete that 1 rep, you'd be training at an RPE of 10 and intensity would be 100% of your 1 rep max. Now if you lift at 85% of your 1 rep max and complete 6 reps, again you would be training at an RPE of 10 according to the 1 rep max calculator scale. But if you just did 1 rep at 85% of your 1 rep max, you would be training more at like an RPE of 6. So if you train at your 1 rep max till failure, complete 1 rep, that would be an RPE of 10. If you do train at your 10 rep max and do all 10 of those reps. So you do 10 reps until failure, which would likely be 75% of your 1 rep max. That would be an RPE of 10 too. So both of those are RPE of 10, but the one that will take more out of you and put you at more risk for overtraining would be the one that's RPE 10 but 100% of 1 rep max. So to make things simple here, assuming you're taking your sets until failure, the heavy weight low reps will take more out of you than the low weight and high rep sets. Now when it comes to cardio, your maximum force output would be your sprint time, your 100 meter dash time, but you could also use VO2 Max as a measurement of intensity here too, and I would recommend that you use that. So when it comes to volume and intensity here, if you sprint 16 100 meter dashes and go all out on every one of those, and then let's say you just run a mile as hard as you can, both are the same distance, so we would have the same volume here, and RPE would be 10 on both of these since you're doing both of them at maximum exertion. But since the 100 meter dashes would be ran at a faster pace because you're taking breaks in between them, that would take more out of you than just doing the mile as hard as you can. So for cardio, you could just calculate the total volume just by taking the total mileage times it by the average speed of the mileage. So for volume, when it comes to resistance training, it's basically just sets times reps times weight. But it's also important to have some common sense here too, because according to that calculation, if you do a long muscular endurance workout at an RPE of 5, you will get way more volume in than if you just did 1 rep maxes at an RPE of 10, which would take so much more out of you than that muscular endurance workout at an RPE of 5. So this is something to take into consideration when it comes to designing your workout to make sure you're not overtraining. But intensity and RPE are very important to look at too. Now, the next thing is recovery. So when it comes to recovery, how long you give yourself to recover is very important, but it's also very important to look at your nutrition, see how much sleep you're getting a night, and are you able to reduce the other stresses in your life outside of training. Alright, so I know it's a lot of information, so make sure you go ahead, comment your questions, and I'll make a part 2 on this to clarify things more. Also, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you do not miss out on my part 2. Thanks for watching, and I wish the best of luck to each and every one of you at achieving your fitness goals.